والسلام على رسول الله. So we continue with the tafsir of Imam Qurtubi for Surah Al-Fatiha. Here we come to a point in which first of all, when we look at Surah Al-Fatiha, the beginning of the surah is a demonstration of the most perfect way to praise Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. That's why some of the ulama, and we covered something of this in this class, they say that the dua, the pattern of dua or our dua should imitate Surah Al-Fatiha. So beginning the surah, you see that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is praised and is reflected upon who is Allah. It's not just the issue of praising, but there's praising Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, Alhamdulillah. And then there's that recognition of who Allah is, Rabbul Alameen. And it doesn't stay just at that point. It gets pretty intimate. Because Rabbul Alameen, there's a part of it which is personal, in the sense that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is not only the creator, but we in ourselves, in our lives as Muslims, we experience how it is that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala intervenes in our lives, especially in times of hardship. Sometimes when we reflect back in moments in which we experience extreme hardship, there seems like when we reflect backwards, we begin to look in hindsight that there was some protection, some guidance. Even though in the midst of it, we're going through the fire. Whatever, like say in Arabic, mashakil al-nas, problems of the people. It could be a number of different things. And actually a brother recently, you know how we all have this Facebook culture, but the brother, he was saying, he had a picture of himself in the hospital. And he said, when instability comes, instability in our lives, when it's matched with dua and ibadah, it seems to bring us close to Allah Ta'ala. If it's matched with ibadah and dua. For other people, it can take them to the other extreme, where they become distant from Allah. Some people become close to Allah Ta'ala when they taste some ease. That's all personality. Some people, they when hardship comes, they distance themselves from Allah. Other people, when hardship comes, they come close to Allah. Everybody has their way of being tested. But in any event, the point of saying all of that is that we experience the concept of Rabbul Alameen, or the idea or the teaching or the lesson in our lives. If we're sincere and we study our situations, we see that. But the Quran doesn't stop just at that. The Quran reminds us, and for majority of the scholars, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is part of Surah Al-Fatiha, with the exception of the Malikis. The majority of the scholars, they say that the Basmala is part of Surah Al-Fatiha. So Surah Al-Fatiha begins with making sure that we understand that Allah wants good for us. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. In that sense, that there's a softness there. There's a softness. It's not just that Allah created us. We're being introduced to the idea that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala engages us with rahmah. Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is described in the Quran rahmatan lil alameen. Some of the ulama, they say that description of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or that sifa, that characteristic of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as rahmatan lil alameen, is really the overflowing love of Allah for the creation. And we mentioned this here, that when we talk about the alameen, the ulama, they debate. What is the meaning of alameen? And some say they restricted it. We covered it in Tafsir al-Qurtubi. They restricted it. Let's just focus on ourselves, to human beings. And the other life forms, but in a very limited way. Those life forms that have, like the jinn. Those life forms that have will. But in any event, that doesn't concern us so much. What concerns us is that in that tafsir, the focus is on us as human beings. Rabbul Alameen. That Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala just didn't create us and leave us. But Allah created us and takes care of us and sustains us. And then not only that, sends the Rusul. And in the case of the end of the series, the line of the Rusul, the Prophet Muhammad, as Rahmatin lil Alameen. It's not just Rabbul Alameen, but also from the other side, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sends the Prophet as Rahmatin lil Alameen. And so with that said, that there is, we have a debate that goes on between ourselves and the Christians. The Christians claim that God is love. And they say the Muslims are like the Jews, everything is just rigid. They also say we have a personalized God, you don't. Meaning that we have a God, they're saying that about themselves. We have a God that pays attention to us, loves us as individuals. And these tafsir of the Quran that we're talking about, like Rabbul Alameen, Rahmatin lil Alameen, it shows that their thinking is off. Because for us, the dua we're told in the Quran is mustajaba. All dua is mustajaba. Everybody's seeking dua that's mustajab, but all dua is mustajab in one way or another. Some dua is better, is easier, it rises faster, like the dua that's made in hardship, or for instance while traveling, or for instance, the dua of the mother, or the dua at certain times. The dua that's made sending salawat on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's a lot of techniques and tools. But the point being is that Allah hears us in our dua. And Allah hears us as individuals. So the Christians are wrong in that regard. And unfortunately, sometimes when we don't have this type of understanding, even our own people in the Muslim community, they begin to despair. Suicide is something very serious that's taking place in the Muslim community quite frequently, believe it or not. Here. The cases now have become more and more regular. And I think I mentioned we had in Texas one time 50 suicides in one community. But a lot of times, we're not going to judge the people without really understanding. But there is an aspect in which we become suicidal, and I've seen this with people before. I'm thinking even non-Muslims. When you don't feel that you have that connection with something that can move you out of your situation, you feel locked. How you deal with that sense of being locked in your problems, that varies from person to person. There could be mental issues. There could be a lot of chemical imbalances. There can be a number of different issues that will cause the person to just implode and self-destruct, which eventually is suicide. But the issue of asking Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala for help alone, that comes with having a right understanding. That comes with having a right understanding. If we don't feel that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala intervenes in our lives, if we don't feel that dua is mustajaba, that's why we always say, at least I always say, it's very important you have the spiritual dimension and the human dimension. Islam is not just spiritual dimension. You and your relationship with Allah in the spiritual world. The Quran, there's parts of the Quran which legislate brotherhood. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the characteristics that he had, was that people felt that they were the most important thing, to him. This is one of the most things that When we start talking about these issues like suicide and all that, is one of the most things that arises. People feel nobody loves them. They feel unsupported. And that's not, the community. When the community doesn't have that sense, there's a lot of things legislated. Not that you can control everything by rules, but smiling, inquiring about other people. If the person is absent from the soft 3 days, you look for the person, visiting each other, giving each other gifts. The bottom line is when those things are missing and absent, you're going to have a situation in which it's not going to be balanced. You can't expect everything to just come from the unseen when the unseen legislates certain things to make the conditions appropriate for us to be able to engage the unseen. Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in encountering Jibreel alayhi salatu wasallam, he was scared. He had to he sought affirmation or support from Khadija, his wife. And the wife is intimate. The wife she understands you. You see that? That's the first person, the one that, knows your secrets, everything. That's the first sense of security. And then she didn't stay there. She saw outside. She saw from people of knowledge outside of herself. So that's important. So the thing about it is that understanding who Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is, you have to have, we're in the process of teaching and we're in the process of being with people. The community has to be like that as well.
Like I've seen people from older generation, some of them have faith, They don't have a whole lot of studying of Quran, but, the kind of faith they have, I kind of envy.
Mm-hmm.
With all this knowledge, but their faith is so strong, just because, just the faith that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control, and making a dua is sufficient. It just has unbelievable.
There's a debate amongst the scholars, a trend that is a saying that is like a trend. You see it amongst the scholars. Even different scholars, like different approaches. The whole issue of dying with the faith of our grandmothers. The whole issue of dying with the faith of our grandmothers. Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, he was one of the top scholars, tafsir, fiqh, all the different branches of knowledge. And one time, there was a group of his students, they were walking with him. And somehow the story, to some effect, it was saying that there was like an older person or something that was walking by. And I guess the students didn't like the way that the person didn't, some people demand, all of that stuff. And so one of the students says, do you know who this is? This Fakhruddin al-Razi. He's the imam that has X amount of proofs for the existence of Allah. And so the person says, what? X amount of proofs. That means he had X amount of doubts for the existence of Allah. Right? In other words, it kind of came down to some simplicity. And you find that there's stories of scholars that they're going through this journey of knowledge, like massive journey of knowledge. At the end, they come back to simplicity of faith. That, you need both. But there's something to be said for simplicity of faith with certainty. Right? But you still, because we're human beings, there's issues that come up in your mind, in your intellect, the world, the dunya, complexities. But there's a core of this, which is that. It's a core of it, and that's the beauty of Islam. The beauty of Islam is that if you try to come in by the way of the intellect, okay, fine, come in. Or if you come in by the way of trust and acceptance, fine, you come in. It speaks to people in different dimensions of life. It's not just one dimension, and we forget that side sometimes, right? We forget that side. But the reflection is more on that Iman needs لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. That hadith is well known. I reflected on the hadith for years. It's a hadith that's in Bukhari and Muslim. that none of you believes, this is a literal meaning, none of you believes until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. The literal meaning of the Arabic is that none of you has iman until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. You know, the brother here is both brother and sister. It's not exclusive to men. But the meaning of the hadith really is that your iman is not complete. The literal meaning is it wipes out any iman. That's the literal meaning. You have no iman unless you love. But the real meaning, when you look at it overall, and you know, with other ahadith and ayat of the Quran, is that the iman is incomplete until we love for our brothers and our sisters what we love for ourselves. That means even with ourselves is a challenge. Do we even know how to love ourselves? You see what I'm saying? Do we even know how to love ourselves?
I don't think I get that point.
The hadith says, none of you truly believes until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. So the foundation comes back to you loving for yourself. What? You see what I'm saying? So then the question becomes, do we even love ourselves? Because here the love is two-dimensional. It's a dimension that has to do with loving ourselves, and the other dimension has to do with loving others. And that's one of the most difficult things. Some people bring in religion and they bash the person. It's like you're not even dealing with the human being. You see what I'm saying? You're dealing with just rules. You're not dealing with the human being. Sometimes in husband-wife relationship, the one wants to possess the other, like object. Is it, you know, you're not dealing with the human being. So then sometimes the parents, they think love is only good school, you know, good house, money, this, that, everything else is gone. The child has no interaction, no conversation with the parents, nothing. No spiritual life, nothing. So that issue becomes hard. The point being is that really loving Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is both on the two levels. One is on the level of we love Allah in trying to follow what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala commands and legislates and prohibits. And then the other, a part of this is not just between us and Allah. It's between us and the human beings. Right? I personally don't doubt that people have iman in terms of their relationship with Allah. What I do doubt is that if we know how to love each other. You see what I'm saying? That I doubt that, because a group that loves each other, half of the stuff that we see, you wouldn't see. Half of the stuff we see, I'm talking about literal problems that we see, we wouldn't see. If we had the love for humanity, like rahmatan lil alameen, what do we say about the Prophet Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam? About Prophet Noah and his people. Yeah, the story is like, he's like, whoa, look at the amount of patience he had with them.
He's also the first messenger.
In a sense, you know, that they say that, but then what is the role of Adam to his children? You know, that becomes, they say that, but then what is the role of Adam and his children? The ulama, they say that, but Adam came into the dunya for what purpose? And then he had children, like what was his relationship to them? But the universal prophet, you know, in that sense, Noah is known for that. But does Islam begin then? You know, those are questions. Does Islam begin only with the Prophet Noah, or was it there before? We believe Islam came from way back. The messengers are also considered the angels who come to humanity. Messengers can be angels or they can be human beings. In that sense. But the dilemma is that faith, I like to say that we X'd out the human being. We X'd out the human being. It's easy to say, I love Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and then you have your own, and then you have no regard for the human being. The iman is not complete in that regard. So then when we get to these points, that's the point of this, a healthiness. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. That we're asking Allah Ta'ala, we're saying that it is you that we worship, right? It's you that we ask for help. When people get to that point of despair, right, then don't we say that part of iman is to alleviate the burden of the other of the believer? We say that that's part of iman. So the case that I'm trying to make here is that, look, let's be practical. If you want to have a relationship with Allah, you tighten up on your salah, you make dua, you read Quran, you do some basic things, and you may not feel 100% all the time. Sometimes your iman, you feel like my iman, like salah was just like a waste of time. And then other times you feel, Allah, you feel the connection. Aside from all that up and down in iman, it's like, the issue comes back down to the relationship with others. Let's keep it practical in that regard. If we, when you come into the masjid, you may feel tired, you may feel even negligent, but then somehow because you're in the environment, it pushes you. Oh, the brother made 2 rak'ah, I should make 2 rak'ah. Oh, the brother's reading Quran, I should read Quran. The environment changes. So that environment creates a better opportunity for iman. And the same thing with, what we're saying, like in this regard, for developing our iman to a level where we can really depend upon Allah. We need each other. There's nothing wrong with saying that we need each other. I don't understand the Muslims sometimes in this regard. We need each other. Brotherhood it's not gonna come like automatic. We still have a long ways to go in that regard. So it begins in the family, it begins in your tribe. We still have a long way that it's beyond the tribe. We're not at that level yet. We're not at that level. That's the early generation had to fight that struggle. They fought that struggle. Now we're just struggling to have iman in the household, iman in the masjid, iman between the brothers, that type of thing. And so when we ask Allah Ta'ala for help and success, this is really talking a lot about ourselves. We're dependent. We're dependent. And the more that we have that understanding, we have to do our part. But we're dependent, ultimately, on Allah Ta'ala. Whoever recites, you alone we worship and you alone we ask for help, cannot be considered guilty of espousing either the doctrine of fatalism or of absolute free will. That meaning, as Sulaymi, he says that in the Al-Haqa'iq, right? That meaning is that basically it's not just that Allah controls everything and there's no free will, or it's not just that we're so free we control everything. This has been an issue, the issue of what is free will. It has been what is qadr? It has been a major debated issue, and a lot of people have made mistakes in it. The definition of qadr is sirullah fil qawn, is the secret of Allah in the universe. Because in reality, scientifically, everything seems like it's controlled by cause and effect. So the human being is an anomaly, deviates from the norm. The human being deviates from the rules of the universe. We can try to alter the rules. But here it says, somewhere in this ayah of the Quran, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, it shows that ultimately we have to do our part in ibadah and action, and ultimately Allah is in control. How that works out is not a real concern, right? It's not a real concern. So then the issue comes to guide us on the straight path. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. That in reality is where Iman is at. Some people even say, some of the ulama, they say, for instance, if a sign of Iman is when you give from your wealth, why would it be a sign of Iman? What happens when you give from your wealth?
There is no reasoning. It just
There's no reasoning, and also you lost at face value. Literally speaking, you lost because you have $1,000, 10,000, 150. It was in your pocket. You give it, and it's no longer with you. Iman is believing that has some impact on another level in the spiritual sense. And so the same thing when we start saying about, for instance, صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, that there's some path there of this group of people that in the world and in the dunya, that whatever they did, they're rewarded for. The first example is more individual, on the individual level, like you give and then you have this Iman. But then now this is on the group level, that there's a group of human beings on the earth, that they're on the earth and they have some sense of guidance and acceptability with Allah. Allah accepts them. It's not just, Allah is pleased with them. It's not just that they seem to be on the right path, but Allah is pleased with them. Allah's ni'mah overflows with them. That gives a sense of hope. It gives a sense of hope. Because if not, then it's like, what's the purpose of life? It just seems like a fight between the powerful and the weak. It seems like whoever has the money wins the game. Whoever has the most guns wins the game. Everything is upside down in that sense. But here, there's that meaning that there's something that pleases Allah. That we won't be able to have a sense of that unless we have Iman. You're believing that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala guided us and showed us the way, and there is something as a way, and that way leads to the unseen. That's a belief. If you open up that conversation, where do we go after death? Just open that conversation up with anybody, Muslim or not Muslim. Yeah, death is a lesson that they say is universal. Nobody debates it. It happens. But what comes after, poof, that whatever, how many seconds you're in this dimension and poof, you go out. That's a belief. That's a belief that you have, is a belief that life has meaning, that there's some other world, that there's goodness, that there's the materialists in this time period, those who just believe in this, what they see, what they can prove scientifically, at the end is despair. Because what are they going to do for us with the issue of death, right? If we go with them on their madhab, on their aqidah, what do we do with the meaning of death? That means life. There's nothing beyond that. You get what I'm saying? The point of mentioning all these things, these ideas is what creates that suicidal environment. It creates that environment of, these ideas is what creates, I'm going to drink my life away. It creates that. But brotherhood, sisterhood, solid family, people loving each other, and it creates a different environment completely. And you see that if you're in education, you see that with students who come from a solid family is loving. They don't even have to have a lot of money, but it's loving, they care, the way they behave. And then the child that comes out of that family that there's serious issues, the behavior is completely off. Same thing with when people go to become spouses, depending upon how that person grew up. If that person grew up in an environment that was loving this, and then they have the ability to love, to make it work. But when that brokenness is there, it takes much more effort. Right? It takes much more effort. So guiding us on the straight path as a dua, right here it says that is implying that this is something desired by the speaker from, you know, the shawk and the raghba, that desire and that, you know, that wanting has to be there. You have, you know, in order for that to be there, you know, you have to believe that there's some other thing beyond what's in this world, some other meaning even in this world for what we do. If that's not there, it's hard to believe in the value of that. You guys get me or no? That's the unfortunate thing that's not being taught. We have a lot of durus in Aqidah. Who Allah is shirk, this, that. That's, for some people that may be a problem, but for the vast majority, that's not the issue. The issue is stuff like this. How do I deal with hardship? How do I deal with crisis of iman? How do I deal with the way the dunya is? You know, that's my suffering. Why am I being tested? Myself. Matter of fact, you hear something now that you never heard from the Muslims. Why is Allah testing me? Right? You know, I don't deserve to be tested. You never heard that from the Muslims. That's not really an orientation of the Muslims. The Muslims didn't think like that.
Good hadith, Prophet Hazrat Fatima said that the most tested individual was Prophet and he's a rahmatul alameen. So what did he do?
Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ, you don't see that type of example in all of the varying hardships that he went through. That's not the orientation that he had. Right? And for us, that's the difference between us and the Jewish community. Because in Jewish thinking, they get into debates with Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. For us, that's like off limits. You know, we're the creation, and in that regard, but the way that we look at Allah is different. That's why I mentioned in the beginning of Surah Al-Fatiha, the way that we look at Allah changes the dynamics. Right? We don't look at these situations as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala intending harm for us. Right? We look at that there may be something we don't understand, or it may be some person that needs justice. Justice needs to be, you know, is giving us a problem of not giving us our rights. But guiding us to the straight path, you know, is preceded by this belief in goodness. This belief in goodness, that there's what we do is rewarded with goodness, and that what happens hereafter, you know what I'm saying, is a world of goodness. Or else it's just like everything else. You know, and then we talked about this point a little bit, the path of those whom you have blessed. Someone may be guided to the path and then prevented from going along it. It is said that it is another path and means of knowledge of Allah. Right? So this path is the same as the first, and the meaning is continue to guide us. Right? So you can be guided to the path, but then there's no continuity. So here it's saying, you know, that what we're asking for is that to be guided to the path and to continue on that path. That's continuous dependency on Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. In other words, it's not just, okay, I did A, B, and C, and it's a finished work. You know, I did A, B, and C, I did my ibadah, did this, that. It's done. No, it's a continuous process. It's a continuous asking. It's a continuous struggle. This is one of the dilemmas of erasing the word jihad from the vocabulary of the Muslims because of the political correctness, because of all the geopolitical stuff. When you erase the word jihad, then you erase the concept of struggle in the dunya. That there's a struggle that we have to engage in. Right? We're not talking about necessarily war here. But when you remove the issue of struggle out of the life reality, then you get what you get on multiple levels. Just look at marriages. If it has a little bit of struggle, oh, I'm out. Divorce. Youth. Oh, if it's too much of a struggle, and you see a lot of the elders, they say that we had to work hard. You know what I'm saying? You have it easy. But when you remove that, there's no spiritual growth. When you remove the struggle part of life, there's no spiritual growth. Because spiritual growth it comes with, even physical. You go, first you may be weak, you go to the gym, you start lifting. Then after some time, yeah. You see some people, they start running slow. Then after a while, 2 hours straight at the same rate. But that came with the struggle. And it's the same thing with the spiritual life. We fool ourselves. We want to end on this note, but we fool ourselves if thinking that the spiritual struggle is not essential to our growth. Sometimes you bottom out in Iman. Sometimes you fall into sin. The issue is not falling into sin and bottoming. The issue is, what are you going to do? You're going to stay there? You know what I'm saying? Or you're going to struggle and work through that. And then there's the struggle of maintaining. If we don't have that sense and we think and we go along with what people are saying nowadays, as soon as we get hit with any problem, our iman just completely collapses. No, it's part of the struggle now. Sometimes you have ease, sometimes you really go through it. And so, but the reminder here is that we want to be, on that path of those who have been blessed by Allah wa ta'ala. Some people exaggerate on this because then they start saying the awliya. The awliya are the ones that have the blessing of Allah wa ta'ala. So yes, there's the Prophet, the Salihin, others, those who, we send salawat on a number of different groups in the tashahhud. But to put an overemphasis on the awliya, the way that people do, or people who they claim are the awliya, that does a lot of destruction to religion. Our religion. Because then what it does is that it gives this idea that this person has the barakah and the blessing, and that's it. I don't have the barakah and the blessing, so I have to go to this person, get the barakah and the blessing. Right? When that's like Christianity, where Islam eliminated. Yes, there's people that have barakah and blessings, but Allah tabarak wa ta'ala opens that path for you, for everyone, and there's equality in that regard. That path is open to everybody. But part of the issue is the issue of struggle.
Isn't it that, we are mortals break a lot? I mean, because of hardship, because of not praying, or because of materialism, or whatever is going on in the world. So if you have a person like Awliya,
Yeah.
I mean, the right Awliya, there are a lot of fake ones. Isn't it what I understand is that he elevates you to a level where you can come back to the straight path, like guide you, okay? Because once even if you are not a Muslim, or if you're not a religion, when you really start breaking, you go to therapists. It doesn't, a lot of things doesn't make sense to you, and he by talking and by reasoning, and he said that basically eventually he said the therapist would.
Yeah, but Maulana Shaykh al-Islam, Shaykh al-Hadith, Maulana Zakaria, one time there was some debates like on the issue of tasawwuf and all that stuff. And so one of the things that he says, okay, you may not have that person around you, what do?
Yeah, I mean,
you're going to travel to Pakistan, or you're going to travel to China or India because there's no awliya. You may say, oh, there's no awliya in Chicago. It makes the deen not workable, right? So then the issue is the issue that he says, okay, fine, you may not have the teacher, this, that. So you grab your Muslim brother or sister and you go into an agreement that we will encourage each other on the right path. Right? He said, if you don't have that, then you read the lives of the Salihin to become inspired. The point that I want to say, I want to break the dependency point. I want to break the dependency point because the dependency point, if we have that, we'll never be able to function, period.
Dependency is dangerous because it leads to something else.
Can lead to shirk.
It leads to shirk. And that's what happens in the part. In the early stages, maybe those, holy men or awliya, they're not worshipped as they are being worshipped. They literally make sujood to the right?
There was some mashaykh in Egypt. One of the mashaykh, he was my teacher. And he was known to be a person of scholarship and ibadah. He used to go from Masjid Dardir, used to teach Imam Dardir's book actually, in his own masjid, because he believed in the Imam getting his reward for the fact of he wrote this book and then the book is being taught in his own masjid and so on and so forth. So I think I told this story. One time I was struggling with my iman. And so I told him, yeah, Sheikh, I'm struggling, really struggling. Should I, what do you think I should do with this issue? And then he just looked at me. He said, because we were going to another masjid, he was going to teach another class. And actually, it was walking past the masjid of Hussein, Al-Hussein. He used to stop and pray there and then go to another masjid and teach. That was the routine. Go from Dardir, Masjid Hussein, go to the other masjid. He had a love for Hussein. Controversial, because whether Hussein's body is there or not, but he had a love for Hussein. So then he told me, he says, something to the effect, Ya ibni alayka bi sharia. My son, take to the sharia. I said, but Sheikh. He said, but what? But sharia? Are you doing the but for the sharia? Is there any other path other than the sharia? So, a lot of the ulama that are like awliya, they refer you back to the ilm, not to themselves. Not to themselves. They refer you back to the ilm. And they'll teach you how to implement the knowledge so that you have to go on your own journey. That's your journey. But it's true. I know what you're saying, that guy there that can work on the spiritual dimension, that helps. No doubt about that. But we're at a point that none of that environment exists. Even Sheikh Ramadan al-Bouti, who was, inshallah, Shahidi, was murdered in Syria. In the masjid, they killed him in the masjid. The video was on YouTube. He was assassinated. He was giving a class like this, and they killed him in the masjid when all the fitna was taking place. Even he had said, in my time period, and he's considered to be was one of the top scholars, at least within the Arabic speaking world. I wouldn't give anybody bay'ah in that regard for that. So the point being is that, the literacy level, the knowledge level, and justice. The issue of justice. You feel despair when there's no justice. That's the reality. When there's justice, you feel happy. Yeah, things are working. Why do some people like this land? Because you can have a contract, you can go do business. They tell you $230. Say ship $1,000, it comes $998. Hey, what happened to the rest of the money? Yeah, we made a mistake, we returned. Because there's a justice in the contracts. But that issue, of the awliya and the lack of justice, that has led to a lot of insanity. In Egypt, they have something like mahkamat al-awliya, is like the court system of the awliya. I think I mentioned that before too. That if you have a problem in the dunya, you go to different masajid that are known to be Ahl al-Bayt. You take and you write something and you drop it off at each masjid, and like you're asking, for them to help you to intercede because you have no justice. The superstition comes when the Muslim community goes away from implementing the deen and rights and responsibilities. That's just the bottom line. The superstition begins to come at that level. You know, when we eliminate the rights and the responsibilities that we have to each other. People feel despair and alone when the zakat is not implemented, when the sadaqah is not implemented, when the brotherhood is not implemented. And some of these people that are committing suicide, you go into the stories and you see some of these sisters are single mothers, no fathers around, no family support. I heard a sister right now who I know. She's a Muslim sister. She's in Puerto Rico. Palestinian background. You know, right now in Puerto Rico, there's earthquakes. And there was a hurricane 2 years ago. She said nobody in her family even asked. Some of them are in Palestine, some of them are, do you need anything? Recently, she said because she's in an area where it's affected by the earthquake, I want to leave. So it was an issue, a circle in the family, like, where does she go? She's there alone. One of her siblings said, you come, I'll give you $20 a month. $20 a month? How can you function with $20 a month? So, you know, those people, a lot of those people like that, they have iman. Because in reality, they're abandoned in the dunya. But when you hit the weakness, you see what I'm saying? And that's kind of the theme that I wanted to say, that when you hit the weakness, a weak point in your life, yeah, crazy thinking comes into your mind. And the emphasis here is that we need to support each other. We stop playing the games. That's practical. That's not something from the unseen. It's legislated from the unseen in the Quran. They say the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, when they would leave each other, they would recite Surah Al-Asr, wal-Asr, inna al-insana fi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bis-sabri. And so, you know, in some of the ulama, they say that here in Surah Al-Asr is not just emphasizing like haqq as in truth, is emphasizing haqq as in rights. The rights we enjoin upon each other, our rights and responsibilities to Allah and to each other. We make the religion complicated in that regard, because when we start talking about on this level, now change has to come. If we keep it on the spiritual level out there, there's no change that has to come in the dunya at all, period. It's just you navigating your emotions and your situation. But when you bring it to that level, no, change has to come in the community, in the masjid, in husband-wife relationship. That's when the revolution comes. The transformation, that's when it comes. When you start asking for the change in the people, we're not talking about perfection. We're talking about people actually making an effort. Once you bring that in like that, that's when everybody starts, no, hold on a second. Wait, why are you talking about dunya? Focus on akhirah. No, there's no way to focus on akhirah without focusing on dunya. Because when we're asking about the path of those who have been blessed, an'amta alayhim, that's the path of those who establish the deen. And for me personally, it's impossible to establish the deen with our weakness as human beings without basic things in life. Water, this is like fire, love. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala didn't legislate that every person you come into the dunya alone and you have, it's like you begin from the Stone Age. You know, you have to build up everything from the Stone Age. You get what I'm saying? It's not, the struggle is not to that extent. You know, you're supposed to be brought into the dunya. There's supposed to be a supportive environment. You're supposed to be in a supportive community. This is human beings. Let's not use the standard of crazy people. For crazy people, the standard of crazy people, whoever they may be, is that I look at you, you're struggling as a human being. Oh, well, your problem, and I keep moving on. Like you're not even a human being. So what's the purpose and value of religion at that point? They actually say that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, in some biographies, they say Isa came in and he saw that they had used the temple. They used the temple for like a commercial enterprise. He came in, threw over the table. They say that, this is what we grew up with. That Isa used to walk with the prostitutes. Alayhi salatu wasalam. There was a sheikh actually in Syria. I don't even know if he's still alive. I heard the story from some of the students. He actually used to pay the prostitutes to come out of the prostitution. He used to give them money so they come out of prostitution and they clean their lives up. That's deen. Not to sit on the side, look at this, this prostitute, what's the purpose? The Anbiya, did they come for that? Did they come to, immediately, did they come for establishing judgment on the people? Or they came to bring them out? And I mentioned that example before. There's a big difference between the culture of the deen and the culture of revelation. How the revelation, the Sahaba, they came to the Salah intoxicated, drunk. And the Quran comes and corrects them. So if the Quran is coming and correcting them in slow stages, not just condemning them, you see what I'm saying? Then what about our situation? And that's why this stuff is not impactful. The knowledge is not impactful in that regard. And when you start bringing in these changes, yeah, some people don't like these types of changes because they want the world to be messed up. They want human relations to be messed up. You can correct the divorce issue. You can correct the poverty issue. You can correct a lot of those issues. But that needs human beings that care. That's the reality. When human beings care, mostly all the labor laws in this country have come from that. Human beings caring. Say, no. This is not how the workplace is going to be. Even women's rights. Even women's issues. The last few weeks I heard so many stories of the level of destruction from my own people in Puerto Rico, the way that the women are being treated, the level of sexual abuse in the workplace, manipulation, husbands killing the wives, because it's an environment in which poverty dominates. Poverty dominates. Is an oppressive situation. So when those situations are like that, it's like jahiliyyah. Everything is out of control. So we don't, again, when we start talking about this, when we start talking about that path that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has blessed those people to be on it, and it's the ni'mah of Allah, it has to have some relationship back down to the earth. We have our time. Our time will come when the unseen will come, our book will come out, the judgment will come out. But on the earth, how do we deal with people? Okay, fine, you may not be into the correcting things on a political level, but interaction, on the interpersonal interaction, how does that work out? Right? That's the only way that we're going to secure Iman. Other than that, we're not going to secure Iman except on a very personal level. And we said it's not complete. The Iman is not complete if it's just only you and your relationship with Allah. Fine, mashallah. I'm glad you're in a good situation, good condition.
You're not really being tested. If you separate the two, that means you're not putting yourself into. That's why when you get married, you get tested, because you have to deal with the person and the family.
You have to deal with a human being. And this is one of the issues that we emphasize to the brothers. You're dealing with a human being. Forget about you're dealing with another human being. And that human being is going to demand respect and patience and this and that. That's part of the dynamics. If you went into that looking for a robot, then that's not going to work. You're not going to have a flourishing, not only marriage, a community, period. You're not going to have a flourishing community, period. And that's part of the struggle. So we overextend it a little bit, but aqulu qawli hadha astaghfirullahi wa lakum, alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Barakallahu feekum.